Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today's project is going to be a little less exciting because I'm going to be replacing those CV boots that were torn, just some wear and tear maintenance type items. But like I said, if you plan on getting one of these cars and putting an adjustable suspension on it, then most likely you're going to have to do this. I just got to get the car up in the air and get the wheels off, and we can get this project started. Okay, so the car's up in the air. We've got the wheel off, obviously. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and break the large center nut here, which I do believe is a 32 millimeter. I'll double check that obviously when I break it off. And then we're going to keep the brake assembly and everything on. What I'm going to do is break these two bolts here. There's two bolts on either side, which will drop this ball joint so I don't have to break it. This whole bracket will actually just kind of drop down here, and I'll pivot down. I want to break this loose here. That connects it to the sway bar here, and then this ball joint here we are going to have to break. But that should get everything here free enough for me to pull the front end of the shaft out and then wiggle the back end out. So let's get started up pulling her apart. It's actually a 36. Okay, so I got everything loose. Here's the linkage to the sway bar here. You're going to need two 14 millimeter wrenches to get this off. There's two bolts here, one there, one there. These are 19 millimeter. Get those loose. And then there is a castle nut. Come on. Somewhere. Right there. Also 19 millimeter. Also has a cotter pin down there if you can see it. So you're going to need some pliers for the cotter pin. So pretty much you need two 14 mil wrenches and a 19 mil socket to get everything loose. So I'll get these bolts out, and then I should be able to pull the or loosen up the boot back here, the torn boot, and pull the shaft out with the spider gear. Okay, that main bolt off the front of the axle's off. Everything else is loose down here. All we have to do now is break this ball joint. Break this ball joint here. And then I should be able to unbolt the back of the shaft and pull everything out. As you can see, everything's pretty well loose here. I can actually push on the front of the shaft and Well, it's loose. As you can see, I've got this loose here. This is pretty much free floating. All I need to do is break loose 6 12mm bolts. Now this area is kind of tight to do a socket, so if you kind of see my setup of two 12mm wrenches, one's braced actually against the subframe here, and the other one I'm using a pry bar to get leverage on it and break them all loose. It seems to be the easiest way to do it, unless you have some tools that can fit in there. It just seems all my sockets are too big, so that's the way I came up with. So we'll get these 6 bolts out, and then we should be able to pull the shaft out. Front side of the shaft's out. Alright, as you can see, I got the drive shaft out of the car. Once you get these 6 12mm bolts out, the whole assembly will slide out. Now on the back here you can see there's some type of sealant. The new kit came with this cap, so what we're going to do is get all the sealant off and pry the cap up, and there's going to be a circlip on the inside that should allow me to release the shaft from this coupler assembly here. Then I can get the spider gear pressed off and slide the new boot on. So let's get all that crap off and get this going. As you can see here, I got that cap off, and I've cut the boot off to expose everything, so now I just need to take out the circlip. I should be able to separate the shaft and spider gear from its housing there. The method I used to get it off was kind of crude. I ended up just using a hammer and hammering it around the edges. You kind of hammer here, just kind of around the edges to kind of peel up the edges, kind of break the seal. But when you do this, make sure the shaft is fully extended downward, so you're not hammering into the spider gears there. So it's not the best method, but I tried jamming screwdrivers and all sorts of things in there to try and pry it loose, and it was just too tough. So like I said, a couple taps around the outer edges to kind of curl them up, and then you should be able to pry it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this all cleaned up so we can locate the circlips and get the housing out, and then I can go ahead and press off the spider gear, get the new boot on, and slap it all back together. Alright, kind of got this set up, or I can try and get the spider gears off, but first there's a circlip there that we're going to need to get off. Oh. like so. Okay, now we can get that gear off, slide the boot on, and we're rocking. And we are good to go. Alright, so I don't have a press as such, like a traditional press. So what I've done here is I've used my ball joint press that I've modified. I modified the forks that are sitting around the actual shaft itself to be wider to accommodate the shaft, and I just pressed it down until I got to a point where I could no longer press it in, and I put a nut in there to press it the rest of the way. If you don't have a press and you do have one of these, or even if you don't have one of these, I got that from Harbor Freight for like 16 bucks. I've used it to, besides ball joints, I've used it to pop out wheel studs, and now I'm pulling spider gears off of a CV, so it's definitely a tool I would recommend. It's very versatile. As you can see, I have everything apart. That spreading tool, the ball joint separator or ball joint press is definitely awesome. I thought I was going to need to take this to a guy's shop that I know to get it pressed out, and it turns out I didn't. So now I actually need to go get some brake clean so I can actually clean all the old grease and all that stuff out of here. So I can get all that cleaned up, and then I can actually put the boot on and pack it with grease and put it all back together. As you can see, I have everything cleaned up and staged, ready to be assembled. I just wanted to take a quick look at the kit that I ordered. I got this from a company I've never actually heard of before. I'll put a link in the description below, but I just noticed these are this is an actual genuine Nissan kit. And even the grease. So, and I was looking for this kit. I found it on Right Hand Drive Japan, from Japan, for about 50 bucks, not shipped. This whole kit was about 40 shipped, and it came in about 2 or 3 days, so I'm very impressed with that. Like I said, I'll just put the link. If you need one of these kits, or where I got my kits from, I'll put it in the link, a link in the description below. So let's just go ahead and get her put together. So I have the spider gear back on. I have the circlip back on. Next thing I have to do is push the coupler back up, fill it with grease, and then put the clamps on either end, and then we should be good to reinstall. Pack the channels with grease here. Okay, after lots of finagling and swearing, I got everything pretty much put back together. I do need to go get silicone so I can put a bead around here. I ended up having to reuse the original backing plate. This one got really beat up. I don't know how you're really supposed to get that. I mean, it's a really tight fit. Oh, okay. Well, I tried greasing it up, I tried lubing it, I tried kind of tapping down, tried hammering it, tried prying it, tried everything. So this has a pretty good seal on it. There's no grease or anything come out. So what I'm going to do is kind of clean up the silicone that is here and then put a bead around it as it was before. And then we just have to bolt her all up. Just a little tip. Like I said earlier in the video, I replaced the driver's side. And that kit was not an OEM kit, it was an aftermarket kit. This kit is a Nissan OEM replacement. And I highly suggest trying to find, if you're going to do these boots, getting an OEM Nissan part. If not for only this part here. These clamps, the OE clamps, are 10 times better to work with and easier than the clamps that they give you in the aftermarket kits. The aftermarket kits are just a sheet metal looped around. You need special crimping tools. Technically you need a crimping tool for this, but you really don't. If you see here, I crimped that using the tools you see here. So, highly recommend getting OE kits just for the clamps here. Otherwise you're going to be pissed off. Come on. Only in America. As you can see, I have everything on and buttoned up. I did just take it for a spin to make sure everything was tight and there was no rattles, no weird sounds, no grease slinging anywhere because anything was loose or done improperly. And as you can see, it's still pretty good. There's some grease in there I have to clean up, but the boot itself still good and intact. Everything is good. I did find the service manual for this car, so I'll have all the torque specs and everything. I'll post that in the description below. Like I said, you can flip through and get all the torque specs for everything here. I did the hub nut at 151 foot-pounds because that's what I found on a lot of forums. I did not find the torque specs for these particular bolts here, but like I said, if you are particular about that, I will put that in the description below, along with the a link to the parts that I used for this project. Like I said, it's a fairly simple or easy project. It wasn't very exciting, but it was necessary. Obviously, I don't want to replace these CVs because I can't find an OEM replacement. The only ones I can find are from the Driveshaft shop, which are rated at 1,000+ horsepower and also like are grand. So I want to try and keep these in as good as condition as possible. Like I said, I'll put all my parts and everything in the description below. Thank you for once again joining me on another episode of Project GTR, and hopefully I will see you on the next one.